Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, go big or go home. And we use it in all different arenas of life. And sometimes we use it in entrepreneurship and sales. But sometimes you got to go to the person who wrote the book. Go big or go home. Diana Kander, welcome to the show.
David, thank you so much.
So you have had a very intriguing and interesting career. Some previous books as well, some of which have done super, super well. This book is going to do amazingly well because it's awesome, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But talk about just the professional adventures that brought you to the current work that you're doing today. What's the backstory?
I want to give you the backstory, but first, can I tell you how excited I am to be here and how excited I am about your new book? David, I'm so excited. I can't contain it. I brought you a present. Today.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I am such a fan of your newest book, Do It Selling, and the company as a whole, that I made you a jingle. Do you have a jingle currently?
It's funny. No, I do not.
Okay, well, are you familiar with Michael Jackson's Beat It?
I am.
Okay, well, just put that in your mind. Are you ready? Can I play it for you?
Hit it.
Just do it, do it, do it, do it. Grow your revenue consistent. Much better clients, much bigger deals. We'll work together to sharpen your leads. Just do it, do it. Just do it, do it. Just do it, do it. Just do it.
Wow. Holy
Do you love
smokes.
It? The octaves are so high. The woman who sang it hit such high notes that my system couldn't play it at a loud level. So I'll be happy to send you the original.
You had to get a tape deck that was compatible with dogs. It's like 8 octaves higher. It's like, oh, oh, oh. So
prepping for this podcast helped me grow my own business. So that's never happened before. Thank you, David.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So just for folks listening,
yes, this
was kind of a fun little thing. But it is a perfect example, is it not, of the go big or go home philosophy. Well, and we can unpack that a little bit later, but certainly making a podcast host a jingle after 360 some episodes, no one has ever made me a jingle. In all my professional life, no one has ever made me a jingle. And here you are, Diana Kander, living the message of go big or go home. All right. Well, now, please tell us, how did Diana Kander become Diana Kander?
So I was born in Odessa, Ukraine. I came here with my family when I was 8 years old. I moved to Kansas City, Missouri. We were very poor. My parents had $260 to their name when they showed up in America. And even as a child, if I wanted something, I'd have to figure out how to get money for it. So I turned to sales very quickly. I started selling flea market goods to my classmates. I was in a multi-level marketing program. By the age of 14, I was selling commercial water filters door to door. And it was an avenue that opened up a lot of opportunity for me. I didn't go into full-time sales. My parents were immigrants, so they were like, you have to go to law school. So that's what I did because I was afraid of my parents. And I lasted 12 months as a lawyer. I was miserable. I wanted to go meet people and sell them stuff. I don't know. Help them in other ways, help their businesses. And so I left being a lawyer after 12 months to go pursue entrepreneurship. And I was 24 at the time. I gave myself until the age of 30 because that's how old my parents were when they came to the US. And I thought, worst case scenario, I'll be broke, but at least I'll speak English. So I became a professional entrepreneur. It was close, but I made it by the age of 30.
Wow. What was your benchmark for I need to have achieved X by age 30? Was it an income level? Was it write a book? I mean, what was your definition of success? What was the finish line?
It's like being a professional poker player. You know, if you got money in the bank, you haven't lost it all, and you can keep playing, that was it.
Money for anteing up the next round.
That's it.
There you go. That's amazing. And then your initial, as a speaker and as a thought leader, your initial foray was in creativity, curiosity. What was that first book about?
Well, the first book was, I started 10 businesses in 10 years. Some of them did really well. One in particular did quite poorly. And it was, it grew like a rocket and then it crashed like one too. And I had raised a lot of money for it. It was a very public company. And so while things were not going well, I started journaling because I couldn't make eye contact with any of the people I worked with. And it was just terrible. And that journal turned into my first book. And so that's called All in Startup. And it's a book on how to not do that to yourself, how to launch successful products and services. And that book took off and got in the hands of a bunch of companies who asked me to come and speak about it. And that pretty much started the next phase of my career.
Wow. How about that? So I'm sorry, I got it mixed up. The Curiosity Muscle was book number 2, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And how did we go from All in Startup, don't make the mistakes I made, to really studying and popularizing the power of curiosity?
Well, I got to work with a bunch of large organizations and really spend time inside helping them innovate and launch new products. And I saw that a lot of people there were more focused on, what they had to do, how to be efficient, than maintaining that connection with customers. And I saw large organizations lose their curiosity and not notice that that was the beginning of the end for many of them. And so I wrote a book on how successful organizations, once you launch your product, once you become successful, how do you maintain that curiosity and that relevance to your customers on an ongoing basis?
Do you love selling? I know, me too. Do you hate selling? I know, me too. Listen, fantastic sales book you got to get your hands on. How do I know? It's mine. That's how. Do It Selling is now available for sale. Grab your copy, grab all the bonuses, all the companion tools, all the training, all the videos that go with it at doitselling.com. See you over there. And this brings us to Go Big or Go Home. Now, I will tell you, I have a personal connection to this book beyond the fact that you and I are both in the black, white, and red cover design club. Because as we know, all best-selling, mega powerful business books do have a black, white, and red color theme. But in my corporate career, and even in between jobs when I was not looking for the next thing, I stumbled upon this completely by accident. I would target a company and I would sort of stalk them. So I knew who had a dog, who had a cat. I knew the street that they lived on. I mean, it was kind of creepy. Then I put a box together. And, back in the day, they called these sort of shock and awe boxes. So let's say it was I applied to work for an advertising agency, for example, and I knew some of the big campaigns and some of the big products. So I'd put some of these products in the box. And by this point, I'd written a couple of self-published books, and I put some self-published books and some other things. One ad agency had an office cat. And so I put in some cat food, some cat treats, and some cat toys. And I said, this is for, I forget the cat's name, but I knew the cat's name. It'll come to me if I think about it for a second. I would send off this box. And every single time I did the box of stuff strategy, I didn't always get the job, but I always got the interview. Always got the interview. Very competitive. You can't spam these people. You can't cajole them. You can't persuade them. You can't convince them. But man, when that box arrived at the door and they started going through the stuff and picking things out. So accidentally, I hit maybe 2 or 3 out of the Go Big or Go Home principles. We'll put that out there as a little teaser, little temptation here for people to stick around and hear about how all this actually works. So go through the 5 key pillars of the go big or go home sales philosophy.
Yeah. So the backbone of the philosophy is that you're trying to be memorable and connect with your prospects on an emotional level. And just before I talk about how to be memorable, let's talk about how forgetting works first. Okay. So the research shows that an hour after you make a presentation or you talk to somebody, they'll forget 50% of what you said. And a week afterwards, they'll forget 90% of what you said. And you don't get to choose the 10% that they remember. You know, it was like the way your hair was styled, your glasses, whatever. Yeah. You don't get to pick. And the only way to mess with that curve is to create emotional peaks in your presentation. And if we can tie emotion to what we're sharing, then they'll remember it. So if you think about your wedding day, you can remember almost every aspect of that day, the weather, what the food was, you know, all the people that you saw. But a month before that, you have no idea what you were doing, what you were eating, where you were. So if we can spike their emotions during our presentation, like you did with this box, and spiking their emotions could be making them like guffaw at how clever you are, making them laugh, just making them feel like this isn't transactional, that you took the time to understand who they are and that you really put the time in to show how much you care, then it'll etch into their minds. And so that's the big picture of what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to be memorable. We're trying to talk to their gut and to get them to say like, you know, I don't know what it is, but I like that David. Let's give him an interview, you know? And I know what it is. It's the neuroscience of how to do that. You have to really care. That's important. But if you do care, this book will show you how to communicate that to your customers and prospects.
Yes. So good. I think I'm going to risk the E rating on this podcast episode. It's fine. One of your case studies, and maybe even several of these case studies, you talk about the acronym LTF.
Yes.
LTF. That some big deals, some juicy deals are marked LTF.
Yes.
And you said, hey, by the way, I see this notation here, LTF. What does LTF mean? Yes. And what does LTF mean?
So this is how I met my co-author. I didn't set out to write a sales book. I got a call from this successful CEO who we had a mutual friend, and he said, will you come write a book with me about our company? And I was like, zero interest. Sorry. Could not be less interested. I was like walking my dog during the call. And he was like, that's cool. Will you at least come take a tour? And so I was taking a tour of his facility, and he pointed to this. It's like a 200,000 square foot fabrication facility. They create experiences for sports teams, universities, like big, big things. And he points to this giant thing and he says, that's the world's biggest 3D printer. So that's cool. And he said, we use that to print the world's biggest 3D thing. And I was like, oh, what's that? And he said, oh, it's the torch in the new Las Vegas Raiders stadium. And I was like, oh, that's cool. How did a Kansas City company get that project? And he said, oh, we have this move. It's called the LTF. When we really want to close a big deal, we do this move. Our typical close rate is about 45%, which is still great. But when we do this move, we close 90% of deals. And I was like, what does LTF stand for? And he said, we had a big debate about whether to name the book this, and I argued strongly against it. But it stands for land the effer. I don't want to mess with your ratings, David, on your podcast.
Thank you.
And it got me so curious. I was like, you have a move to close the really, really hard deals. And he's like, yeah. So I started interviewing his employees and his clients. And I became obsessed with this idea and how it worked and the science behind it. And by the end of it, I was begging him to co-author this book. And he got me. He used the LTF on me.
What was your LTF? What was the experience?
How he got me?
Yeah.
Well, I could go through all the tools at your disposal, but it was bringing me into the facility and then not saying, I want to write a book about a specific thing, like all of our values or whatever, but just like, I want to write a book. We co-created the idea together.
Yeah.
You know, it came out of the conversation. So we have this great line in the book, co-creation is an act of seduction. And if you can get somebody interested enough to brainstorm with you, then they'll be more bought into the idea.
Yes, I love that for sure. So let's go. It's funny because you would think if they have this move that closes 90% instead of 45%, why wouldn't they use that all the time? I mean, why wouldn't you just throw the little fish back in the water and have a pure LTF business where every client, every project is an LTF worthy endeavor, multiple 6 figures, 7 figures, multiple 7-figure deals? Why do you think they don't do that all the time?
That's a great question. It's because you have to actually care. So in order for something to be designated an LTF in their company, somebody in the organization has to raise their hand and say, I really care about this deal and I'm willing to go over 100% effort to bring it home. And then everybody else will say, okay, we'll help you. And I feel that way in my own business. Like I don't make jingles for everybody, David. It's really about showing like if I were to come onto this podcast and say, I'm super excited to be here, David. I read your book and I loved it. They'd be like, meh. But if I came here with a jingle, like I thought about it and I wrote the jingle and I got somebody to record it, like I took the time to show you how much. And it's different. It feels different.
Very much so. Very much so. Absolutely. Wow. So let's take our average listener.
Yes.
Sorry, listeners. I know you're not average. You're amazingly incredible. But our average listener is out there in the world of professional services.
Yes.
They're out there, pitching consulting projects, big training contracts, coaching deals, corporate coaching. They're thinking, well, we're not doing a 3-foot torch. We don't own a sports team. We're not in a sexy business. Diana, I don't know if this applies to us. And I'll tell you, even if it does apply to us, and by the way, hint, hint, it does. Even if it does apply to us, I'm not creative like Diana Kander. I don't have all these wacky, wonderful ideas of, make this one a jingle and send this one a box of candy and whatever. And so how do the average, maybe not that creative, or their self-image is not that creative, how do we get started? I mean, what are some of the things that we can start thinking differently about to get the attention of a prospect and not only land that first meeting, because that's as far as I got, as I was able to land the first meeting, but then I often didn't get the job. I got one job this way, but I didn't get all the others. Going beyond the novelty of, okay, the first big thing is coming in over the transom, but now you have to close the deal and you have to use the same go big or go home principles all the way throughout. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, I think about it. You can use it to get the meeting. And that's why I think your book and mine are just like a marriage made in heaven, because you detail so thoroughly the first 90%. I mean, you detail the whole thing, but I think I come in at the last 10%. Like when you need to close the deal, when it's when they're considering you and you need to do something to make them feel in that gut that it's the right decision. And, we fool ourselves to think that people make decisions rationally, especially in the business setting, especially in the consulting setting. But our research showed that all of our decisions are made with emotions. And then we justify them with our brains. In fact, we have this amazing piece of research where they put people in an MRI machine and they would ask them to make a series of decisions. And the researchers could predict the decision 11 seconds before the person making the decision. So they saw where it was made, they knew what it was, and then the person rationalized why they were choosing it. Crazy, right? And we also have studies that show in a business setting, trusting your gut and connecting emotionally with the person that you're selling is more important than in a retail like B2C setting. And that's because they can't return your services. They're making a high stakes decision. This is going to impact their business. And so people need to feel it in their gut much more. So I think about it as the last 10%.
Yes.
And this book outlines 5 tools that anybody can use to do something to connect emotionally during that presentation. Whatever you feel most comfortable doing, you don't have to write a jingle for them, although that would work really well.
Yeah, it would, for sure.
You have 5 tools at your disposal where you can kind of go through them as a list and be like, which one of these do I want to add to this situation? And I'm happy to go through them.
Yeah, let's go down all 5 and then we can dig into your 2 or 3 favorites.
Yeah. Well, they spell out the word magic because we're adding a little bit of magic to the pitch, to the presentation. M stands for make it surprising. A, analyze them on a deeper level. We should all be doing this one. You have a great series of chapters on this in your book. G, you give the pitch in the right order. I think this is like necessary for all of us in professional sales. I, you include 3D objects. And C, you co-create together. See, those don't sound scary, David.
They don't. They don't sound scary.
None of them are like bring in musical instruments.
For sure. So which one do you want to start with? And we don't have to go in order. We can go in a surprising order. Let's start with analyze them on a deeper level, because I think you're right. Everyone falls short here. They just show up and, the pre-work, the research. One of the things, and this might be what you're referring to in the Do It Selling book, I talk about being a detective on a stakeout. And the punchline is you have to know how they like their eggs. And by the way, the name of the cat now just came back to me. So this ad agency, their initial they were in Center City, Philadelphia, but they were out here in the suburbs for a long, long time when they got started. And the street they were on was called Woodbine Avenue. When they got a cat, they named the cat Woodbine. Then the cat moved to their big offices in Philadelphia, and I included little cat treats and cat food and cat toys. And I said, please give these to Woodbine on my behalf. And, blah, 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 blah. So there you go. But let's talk about that weird stalking level of research that we all should be doing.
Yeah, we call it stalk and awe in our book. And most people do demographic research when they're preparing for a meeting. And demographic research is like, how big is the company? How long have they been in their position? How many employees do they have? And that to me is like trying to turn them into a human-shaped wallet, like you don't care. And what we really think you should be doing is psychographic research, which is understanding their values, what their cat's name is, how they like their eggs, just these things on the periphery of what they do in the business world are the things that will allow you to connect with them on a much deeper level. It's hard to connect on what they do day to day, but if you can bring in some elements of what they really care about, you could really make that connection.
Yes, for sure. So where do we, silly question. Where do we look? Where do we start looking, sniffing around, researching, collecting these data points?
Yeah, the best place to start is LinkedIn to see who you know in common. And I'm going to go a step further and say, call those people that you know in common and be like, tell me about this person. Checking out their social media profiles, seeing what kinds of things that they post about. I had somebody who was like, every third post was that of their dog, their hunting dog. And that was a point for us to connect on. Like, I don't have a hunting dog, but I do have a trained dog. And so they go through the same experience as puppies. And so it was an opportunity for us to connect on something that had nothing to do with business.
Yes. And by the way, I've seen this in action, even in the middle of a prospecting situation. A prospect will disappear for a little bit of time. And, what the consultant wants to do is, hey, looking forward to our next call. Hey, here's my calendar link. Hey, let's get back together and talk about whatever. And I had a client that did like 2 or 3 of these and just radio silence. I said, remind me how you know this person. Well, we're both in Toastmasters. I said, great. So the next email, send them something about Toastmasters and forget about the meeting, forget about the appointment, forget about what you're already talking about. Send them something that they'll really value about Toastmasters. She did that and literally within 10 minutes got a reply. Oh my God, that's so cool. I can't wait to go to that. Are you going to that? Blah, 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 blah. And now we're back in human to human conversation. But that phrase, they're like a walking wallet. Man, how many times do we treat prospects like a walking wallet? And then we're upset that, well, they're not responding to that. Diana, they're not responding when I treat them like a walking wallet. Shocking. Shocking. Yeah. Right? You and I wouldn't respond if we're being treated like a walking wallet either. So really, really good distinction. I love the idea of calling. It's like, hey, it looks like you're connected to this woman, Diana Kander. What can you tell me about her? It's like, really? Oh my God, that's great. And she likes what kind of wine? And she has a dog? And okay. So now I have all kinds of intelligence in a 10-minute phone call that might not be visible on social media, but someone who's friends with you would know that pretty well.
And I think the important thing to mention, like the way I think about it, is they're not considering, again, it's not a rational decision. Like, is this a good business idea or a bad business idea? I think the very first question that they ask is, does this person actually care about me?
Yeah.
And if you can't get them to answer that question, yes, then they don't care about anything else that you're going to say. So this is the most important thing for you to accomplish in your communications and your calls, and just being competent and smart. And in a way that can even be off-putting to them, if you're just talking about how awesome you are. So connecting with them is the most important job you have in professional services.
So I'm going to ask you a question just because I'm channeling our listeners.
Yes.
And I think I know the answer, but you could surprise me. People are listening and they're saying, Diana, this sounds amazing. This sounds like it's a killer, effective, amazing strategy. How can I scale it? Can I send 10 messages at once? Can I send 100 messages at once? Can I find 25 people on LinkedIn? What's the answer to does this scale?
It's like, can you scale relationships with your family, and the people that you care about? To me, and a lot of people have said, like, can you use this for nefarious purposes? And I think no. Like, if you don't really care about them, then you're not going to be willing to do the work.
Yeah.
And this is about building actual human relationships with people and accelerating the speed of trust in a relationship in a very short period of time. If you can connect with them on that emotional level, you're off and running. And if you can set that relationship up right, then they'll be more forgiving. If it's not going exactly as they thought, they'll be more willing to share with you. You want to be in a relationship with them rather than a business provider.
Yes, so important. And also, I just want to remind everyone, we're not selling widgets here. We're not selling bubble gum. Let's say that the cheapest thing that you sell might be a keynote speech for like 10K, 15K, 20K. So that new client is worth at least 20K, not to mention corporate training contract, 50K, consulting deal, 100K, multiple six-figure deals. So people go, well, Diana, this is a lot of work. It's like, yeah, it is. Number one, you have to care. So that's just the baseline that needs to be repeated over and over again. You do have to care. After the caring step, it is work. But we're not doing this to sell like a $5 widget. We're doing this to sell anything from $20,000 to $250,000 to $1 million professional services deals. So the effort is way, way worth it.
And there are certain things you can scale in the approach. You can find something that makes people giggle and then do it over and over again for different people. And I think about it as thinking about your sales process like moments in a movie, like scenes, and thinking about each one and how you can add a little bit of magic to each one. So that opening call that you have when you get to know them, like what's a little thing you're going to do to add some magic and some feeling to it? And then in the closing call, what can you do once you show up on site or whatever, you start your job? What's a little bit piece of magic that you can do? And, the best way to be in business is to get your customers to buy from you over and over again. You're selling the next job as soon as you've gotten this job. So this helps you out at every stage of the process.
Hey, if you're loving this episode as much as I am, pop over to doitmarketing.com/manifesto and get your free 37-page download guide to how to sell smarter, sell more easily, sell more often. That's what we're here to help you with at The Selling Show. Off you go. Let's talk about G, which is give the pitch in the right order. And you've got some great stories. I mean, I love the case studies. I love the examples that are also in the book. How do we screw this up so consistently that we do not give the pitch in the right order?
It's not our fault. Again, it's about our brain chemistry. And did you know that talking about yourself releases the same dopamine as having large volumes of sugar or sex, even? I mean, it's a pretty great drug. And so usually the way we present a pitch is we'll say, well, first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. And then let me tell you about my company. And then I'll tell you why you'll be so successful with me. And I'm sure some people listening are like, oh, is that not how we're supposed to be doing it? And that's how I did it until I saw the science of it. And again, we think that we are establishing credibility and that we need to help them get to know us. But all of the research shows that they do not care about us until they believe that we understand them and that we see the world from their point of view. And so the opening of your presentation or your conversation should be, at least the first third should be, about them and their problem and asking questions as opposed to talking about yourself.
So when we go in and we have this sugar rush of talking about ourselves, we will leave an initial conversation feeling like it went great.
Amazing.
This was so, oh my God, I know we're going to close this one. This one was a slam dunk. Did you see their face? Oh my gosh. And you remember when Bob said this and then Susan's, oh, so good, so good. But the way that you unpack that is, well, they're really happy with their own performance. They're really happy about how they talked about themselves. And they were paying probably zero attention to how any of this landed. And they were probably tone deaf or just plain old missed so many signals, like when the prospect's eyes glaze over or when they start checking their email, or they're totally checked out. But you're having so much fun with your sugar rush that you don't even notice. Is that the kind of thing that's at risk here?
Yeah. I mean, if you leave a room and you're feeling like you killed it, that should be a warning sign that you did too much of the talking.
Wow. So, but I guess we can reprogram our brains, right? So that we can, when we do it the right way, when we do it the go big or go home way, it's not about, hey, did you hear all the great things coming out of our mouths? It's like, hey, did you hear all the great stuff they said? Did you hear all those little kind of deep, dark, dirty secrets that they revealed to us? Did you hear how they really want to fix this problem? So it's not, did you say, right? The sugar rush goes from us talking. Now the sugar rush goes to, look at all the amazing information we collected and look at all the great connection that we built, that these people really feel that we understand them because we worked so hard to, guess what, really understand them. So people should feel understood? No, people should be understood. They shouldn't just, it's not a magic trick, right? It's like, be a better person, and you will make more sales. And I love what you said, the kind of the consistent theme is actually care. Actually caring solves so many problems. Let's talk about the 3D objects.
Yeah.
Because I think that's also something that is not in anybody's playbook as a regular thing.
No, let's talk about it.
Oh, come on. Well, for the folks listening at home, Diana just took a sip from what looks like a Selling Show logo mug. Yes, there.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
That actually is quite attractive.
Yeah, thank you. Look, David.
Oh, dude, you're killing me. You're killing me over here, literally.
Here's what the research shows. People have different learning styles. You might prefer audiobooks or prefer to read them, but we all have one remembering style, and that is visual. Okay? So if we want our thing to be remembered, what we're presenting or we're talking about, if we can find a way to bring it into the three-dimensional world, that is the most powerful way to attach it to memory. So people will remember pictures more than words. They'll remember 3D objects even more. And in my keynote for Go Big or Go Home, the way that I share that message is I'll put a description of a product up on the screen. It's a written description of this product called the Poo Trap, which is a harness that you can put on your dog to collect the poop as it goes. Okay. And so I read it and people are like, okay. And then I put a photo of it, and it looks like this S&M contraption that your dog is wearing with a plastic bag right on its butt, and everyone laughs, and that laugh is the sign of people remembering it, And then I go to the podium and I have this magic bag of tricks, and I pull out a harness and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to pass it around. You see which one of these you remember the most. And then they laugh again. And if we can bring our ordinary notes, and you don't need to work with a poo harness, a poo trap to get them to remember. If we can find a way to share what invisible thing we're selling in a 3-dimensional way, we can unlock a lot of opportunity. And I'll just share with you the example of a good friend of mine. He's a cancer researcher, and the type of cancer research he does is he helps T cells attack the cancer cells in your own body. So you would have no need for chemotherapy, no need for radiation. And that sounds amazing, right? But when my friend goes to conferences, everybody has their own amazing research that they want to talk about. So what he did is he created a 3-dimensional representation of a T cell attacking a cancer cell. And it's basically like a giant blob with these crystal icicles coming out of it, and it has lights. And so he goes to a conference and he plops it on a table and he turns it on. And then people just flock to him, and it gives him the opportunity to share about his cancer research. And it's so different than what everybody else just has words, they have text, they have printouts. So how can you bring your invisible thing that you do in professional services and help them feel it, see it, touch it? You can start the conversation in a completely different way.
Yeah, amazing. I thought where you were going with this actually is he brings this model, the blob, and he puts it down, and then people flock around. And then where I thought this was going is he will ask someone else, well, show me what your treatment does using the 3D model. Well, ours goes in and we do the protein, and then the negative neutrons go in here, and we pull this out, and then we squeeze this thing. And so wouldn't that be cool? It's like, I'm bringing a model not to show my research. I'm bringing a model so you can show me your research using my model and put your hands on my thing. And, then again, you get to talk about yourself instead of me talking about my stuff.
That would be super cool. Absolutely.
Send this guy a memo.
Okay.
Send this guy a memo. I think you and I just co-created something.
Yeah.
So talk about co-creation. And again, this is the 3D objects I sort of had a little bit of amateur experience with. This one I also have a little bit of amateur experience with. The way I talk about it is you can sell more with a sketch than a painting. In other words, if you show up and it's fully formed, beautiful, in a frame, behind glass, and people go, Diana, here's my thing. They go, it's kind of a take it or leave it. And usually it's leave it. You show up with a pencil sketch and you say, hey, you know what? I'm thinking of something like this, but I brought a set of pencils for you. And can we just noodle on this together? And you get them drawing on the back of the envelope or the napkin, and them putting in, I think this should be red and this should be green. And I kind of like the tree should be blue. And let's put a dog in the corner. And literally you can sell more with a sketch than a painting because the sketch isn't finished. And the sketch needs their input to add other elements and the color. But again, I'm coming at it from an amateur standpoint. What does real co-creation mean in the landing a deal process?
No, that's exactly it. And I love that terminology for it. We interviewed a lot of practitioners of this methodology who have landed some huge deals, including a guy who sold a light bulb to GE. Let me say that again. He sold a light bulb to General Electric. And what they told us was they never come to a pitch fully formed. There's always chunks of the presentation that are meant for participation from the other side, a question, a place where they get to design, finish the sketch. And one of my favorite stories from the book is the founders of Square, when they were pitching to raise capital, they had a slide in their presentation of 140 ways that this will not work. So they listed out 140 different things that would kill their company. And then the people in the room would start debating with them and be like, well, that one's not true. I can help with that one. And somebody in the room in one of their pitches was, one of the problems was Amazon decides to do this instead. And somebody in the room was like, well, I'm on the board of Amazon and I'll stop them from competing with you. And that actually happened. But like those people got so excited because now they get to be part of the presentation and talk you out of a negative, you know? I'm sure you have something, David, as part of your presentations of like how to bring in this kind of debate where you share a negative and you get them to debate with you.
Well, it's, if you're the first one to bring up the objection, then it sort of takes it off the table for them, right? If you put the in the ways in the way, which is how I talk about it in my book, put the in the ways in the way, that takes the ammunition totally away from them. And now they're like, oh, well, no, that really shouldn't be a problem. No, I think we can work around that, So it's just totally brilliant because it gets them literally on your side of the desk, noodling and doodling about how to solve the problem instead of talking about, oh, we can't move forward because there's going to be a problem. Yeah, there's going to be 140 problems. So, take it or leave it. This is where we're at. And then go, no, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's really good.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful. So I'm almost afraid to leave anything else out of the magic acronym because I don't know what other surprises you have. So far we have the jingle. We have the Selling Show coffee cup. What else should I be asking about? Hint, hint.
Can I say this about this methodology and magic is most people, when they go into a presentation, their brain first asks, have I seen anything like this before? And if the answer is yes, then it'll say, okay, I'll just go into autopilot. I'm going to think about my to-do list while this person's talking. I'm going to think about when I need to take my car in for an oil change. Like, I don't need to be here. Like, they're just going through the motions.
Yes.
But if you can add elements of magic at the beginning and throughout, then that person is saying, I don't know what's going on here. I like it. And I'm excited about the next surprise that's waiting for me. So I'm going to pay attention. So
yes.
The M in magic, make it surprising, is all about resetting their attention span on a regular basis, And if you think about what we do when we encounter a surprise, we like open our hands, open our mouth, open our eyes. Like we're just taking in as much information as possible.
Yeah.
And that's what you want your prospects to do when you're sharing with them.
And this is where you take out the David Newman bobblehead.
Are you in need of a David Newman bobblehead?
Not particularly, but it would be surprising and delightful.
My next surprise, David, is that for your listeners, actually. I came here for you, but also for them. And, the concepts in this book are so powerful, but you could be very suspicious because you're a very intelligent person and you think very logically. So I would actually like to give you the book for free. All you have to do is email me at diana@dianakander.com and tell me why you want the book, and I'll send you a digital copy for free. You can't get a better deal than that, David.
You cannot get a better deal than that. Totally amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So where can we send people, in addition to requesting the book, which we'll put that in the show notes as well, where can we send people if they want to get connected and stay connected to more Diana Kander brilliance?
LinkedIn is the best place. I would love to connect. I would love to get to know them and follow them as well. Everybody who listens to your show teaches other people awesome things. So I would love to build my network with those kinds of individuals. And I also put out pretty regular content on LinkedIn.
Very nice. Awesome. So all of those goodies, including the link to get a free digital copy of Go Big or Go Home, directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Look in the show notes. All the Diana Kander wonderfulness is waiting for you down there. Diana, if folks were to take one overarching concept from our entire fantastic conversation today about Go Big or Go Home, what do you hope that one overarching takeaway would be?
You can build real connection with prospects at a record speed if you can just find a way to show them how much you care about what you do and about them as people.
Boom. Mic drop moment. That's it. That's it, my friend. I appreciate you. Thank you for dropping so many value bombs in this episode. You're awesome. And we'll have to have you back. We just scratched the surface of what's going on. So look out for another invitation coming your way soon.
Thank you, David.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.